Okay, good evening. I just wanted to, I think we'll give a few more minutes before we start the program, and maybe I'll use that time. I'm Suzanne Lee. I'm a faculty fellow at the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions at the University of Maine, and I'm very pleased to welcome you and thank you for joining us this evening. Just a few notes for those who might be newer to Zoom. We need to have everybody at this point, microphones turned off and cameras turned off just for the presentation portion. But we really want everybody, it's a community event and we definitely want to hear your questions and comments. And so there's a chat function at the bottom of your screen here on Zoom, and you can definitely go into the chat function and, we don't want you to forget your questions. So as you're listening to any part of the presentation and you have questions, feel free to use that chat function and I will actually be monitoring it. So we'll be sure to call up any questions later on after Chef Becky is done with her demonstration. So there'll be that opportunity. So let's see, I think we might as well, it's an evening, it's a Friday evening. So why don't we just get started? And again, I wanted to thank you for joining us for Earth Day, for our very first Maine Food Too Good to Waste Zoom live event. The event's presented by the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions at the University of Maine and our community partners. We'd like to thank the Portland Library, the Reedfield Library, the Waterville Library, and the Winslow Library for their help in putting together the event. I would also like to thank our student producers for this evening's event. We have Jared Entwistle, who is at the University of Maine, the business school as a graduate student. We have Hannah Creighton, who's actually from Thomas College. She's a Mitchell Center student intern. And our director of the evening is Sydney Walton, who is from USM's New Media program. So thank them. And of course, we want to thank our celebrity Maine food rescue hero, Chef Becky Shepherd of the Wild Oats Bakery and Cafe in Brunswick. I want to thank her for sharing her kitchen and her tips and cooking ideas for eliminating food waste. So thank you, Becky. And the reason that we're all here tonight for this sort of fun evening of learning is that we're all joined together, our community partners and statewide, to end food waste in Maine. At this time of rising food prices, and where the first time in our lives, maybe we've seen shelves at the store empty of food and growing food insecurity among sectors of our population, this is not a time where we can afford to throw 40% of the food that we produce, throw it away. So we all have to do our part. And, hopefully tonight we can share some tips for that. Just wanted to share with you on the screen from the Mitchell Center in terms of working with the state. These are the solutions that we have identified for reducing food waste and eliminating it potentially. One is tracking and measuring food usage. So whether in your home kitchen or with businesses, that's the first step. Also trying to increase food rescue, where we know there's perfectly good edible food that's being thrown away. We want to encourage people to try to get that into the donation stream. Solution 3 is an evening like tonight where we're trying to build consumer education. And solution 4, we're really looking to build food processing infrastructure. So like in the old days when we didn't, we always made jams, or we preserved, or we canned, or we dehydrated, looking to solutions like that to not lose food, promoting food donation. And finally, solution 6 is really do every community in Maine, that's our vision, would have a food recycling program. So that's what we're working on. And again, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. And with that, I will let Sydney take it away.
Hi, again, I'm Sydney. I've been working, as Suzanne said, with the Mitchell Center over the course of my semester, helping them implement Solution 3, which is education. And my question is, what does food waste look like in your household? So this could be produce at the bottom of your drawer, or milk that's been sitting there for just a little bit longer than you're comfortable with, or your favorite bag of chips that is at its end and you throw away, the remainder. Before working with the Mitchell Center, food waste for me came from cooking meals. So I live with one other person, just my roommate, and I continuously found myself cooking for like a family of 8 and their dog. Like I just cooked so much food. And I think, as we can all relate, I would end up just throwing away all of this perfectly good food. And no matter how hard I tried, I would never end up eating the leftovers like I said I would. But I think what the key to this is before I started working with the Mitchell Center, because working with Suzanne and her team, I came to the realization that education and awareness was what I was missing. I wasn't able to implement good food habits into my life because I wasn't aware of the impact that it was making on me or on you or on our environment, on all of these things. Um, and so that's why we're here tonight. And as much as I would love to lecture on all the great things that I have learned this semester, I have a short video to try and help us all understand about food waste and why we should care about it.
That every year Americans spend nearly $220 billion growing, processing, and transporting over 60 million tons of food that's never eaten. We're wasting 400 pounds of food per person, while 1 in 7 Americans is at risk of going hungry. On farms, fruits and vegetables are left in the dirt because they're not visually perfect. In restaurants and grocery stores, extra food is purchased just to keep buffets and shelves looking full before being tossed. And in homes, confusing expiration dates lead families to pour perfectly good milk down the drain. If all this wasted food were grown in one place, this mega farm would cover over 3/4 of California. Growing this food consumes over 20% of our national water supply, and once it ends up in a landfill, it's a major contributor to climate change. Well, it's time for a solution. A national study by ReFed, a multi-stakeholder nonprofit committed to reducing U.S. food waste, reveals huge financial, social, and environmental opportunities hiding under all this waste. ReFed's roadmap shows how we can take steps now to reduce food waste by 20% nationwide, reaping benefits of over $100 billion. All of the solutions fit into the broad categories of prevention, recovery, and recycling. Prevention means avoiding food waste from ever happening through solutions like standardized date labeling, consumer education, smaller plates in restaurants, and trayless dining at buffets. These will allow us to buy what we need, store it efficiently, and keep from throwing out perfectly good food, saving businesses and families $8 billion a year. Recovery means we can save unsold food and encourage food bank donations through effective policy, tax incentives, and business education, which will double the meals donated to families in need each year. Some food scraps are inevitable, but recycling allows us to turn them into a valuable resource through composting and anaerobic digestion, which will produce an additional 2 million tons of compost annually, as well as a reliable source of energy for cities and trucks. Solving the food waste problem will require our commitment to 4 paths of action: new financing to scale proven solutions, common sense policy change, adopting of emerging innovations, and consumer and employee education. To learn more about how to cut waste, boost the economy, reduce hunger, and help the environment, get involved and visit refed.com today.
Now I'm going to hand it over to Chef Becky, and she is going to give us some tips that she uses in her kitchen to fight food waste. Production tips.
Hi, I'm Becky Shepard from Wild Oats Bakery and Cafe, and I know that everyone's referring to me as Chef Becky, but I am not a trained chef. I'm just a home cook that has a passion for what I do, and just turned that passion into a living. This is our 31st year in business. And so over the years, I've spent a lot of time just making sure that we aren't wasting food, both from an aspect of profitability and also because it just pains me to know that all of that is going in the landfill, and it will be there for my lifetime and my children and grandchildren's lifetime. So it's something that I've always felt strongly about, and I'm excited that people are really starting to pay attention and that it's getting more traction. So we have a few things that we went around, and Sydney and I talked about some ways that we reuse food, or ways that we use up our leftovers. And so we're going to do a slideshow for you, and I was just going to talk a little bit on that, and then I'm going to do some cooking with you. So essentially, in our refrigeration here, we label everything. It makes it easier for us to order things. It also makes it easier for us to rotate things. We have stickers that say use first, so we're always using those and making sure that that we're keeping stuff as fresh as possible. So not only do we label everything that we've got in the walk-in, but we also have a shelf that's called our use-up shelf. And so when we're making a soup or making anything and we have leftovers, we put it on the use-up shelf. We also have a right-on wipe-off board on every cooler and every freezer that we have here, so that we can tell the rest of the kitchen anything that needs to be used. So we've opened a can of chickpeas, and we need to make sure that someone is going to use the rest of it. And so we may have made hummus with it, and then we're going to, put it in a vegan chili using the chickpeas and the vegan chili. So we take food waste, as I said, very seriously, and we make sure that we label things and rotate them and keep things as fresh as possible, and also make sure that our leftovers don't stick around for too long. With things in our kitchen here, we've got a baking kitchen and we have a savory kitchen. In our baking kitchen, when we're frosting cakes, we have to trim the tops of the cakes because generally they've risen and have a dome on them, and we want them flat. So we trim those tops and we crumble them up and we dry them, and then we run them through a food processor, and we use them to crumb coat the side of our cakes that we have for sale. And it is delicious. It gives it kind of a nice crunch, and it's sort of like an Oreo. It gives it a nice texture, a nice crunch, and a really good flavor because it's so concentrated. So that's an area in our baking kitchen where we use up every part of the cake as we are frosting it. Bananas. We were talking about doing this food presentation, and I was saying that at home, I obviously get fresh bananas a lot and rarely eat every single one of them. So I'll peel them, throw them in the in the freezer, and label them. And I will just add more bananas to them as I go. So I may have, 3 frozen bananas in there. My favorite way of using them is smoothies. I also love to, make banana bread and banana muffins and that sort of thing. So here we actually buy bananas, and we end up letting them rot. I have tried for years to buy rotten bananas, and I can't. So we have to buy fresh bananas and let them rot. At home, they rot when I don't want them to, and I keep them in the freezer. We use them in smoothies here. You can see the different types of smoothies that we bottle. We also use them in some of our cookies and muffins and that sort of thing. with our bread, we go through massive amounts of bread, and we end up making bread and selling it for retail for customers, and we pull half of what we make and we use it for sandwiches. So we're retailing it, we're using it for sandwiches, and then we end up having buckets and buckets of bread ends, you know, the heels or the pieces on the end of each loaf that are too small to use for a sandwich. So we cut them up. I was doing some here. We cut them up, and I'll show you them later. But we cut them and we just make croutons in the oven, and we put them out for sale for our customers to buy. We also put them out for people to purchase when they're having soup and they want to just sprinkle some in their soup. We also grind them up and we make breadcrumbs, so we can make, we do a nice breaded fish dish that we use our breadcrumbs, and we also sell breadcrumbs to customers. In our Caesar salads, we offer little cups of croutons. So we try to give our bread multiple lives before it ever hits the compost pile. You can see our bucket, our gray buckets on the left. Everyone, when they come into work at their station, whether they're in the baking kitchen or the savory kitchen, everyone gets their pig bucket in the morning and you know, uses that. At the end of the day, they have to go out and put it into our bins outside, and we, you know, compost all of our food waste. We compost all of our brown paper towels that we use for drying hands and cleaning up spills. We also compost all of our coffee and our coffee filters, and we have a compost pickup service that we use to do all that. In the olden days, when we were a younger business, we used to have pig farmers come pick it up, and then we started having worm farmers interested, and it worked out great because we didn't have to pay anything to have it hauled away, and people utilized it, especially in their gardens. The coffee grounds were a big thing that people were after. Unfortunately, we produce too much waste now, and we also aren't able to find local pig farmers that are willing to come, you know, on a regular basis to pick it up. So right now we get it picked up by a commercial service 3 times a week. The good news is that it gets turned into compost and we aren't sending it to the landfill. So I have a couple things going here to show you. As I mentioned, the croutons, I just cut up, we have all different types of breads that we sell, and I cut up these breadcrumbs so that, these cubes, so that we can toast them. Essentially, what we do, as I mentioned, is we just do it in the oven. So it's a really quick process. You can do croutons in a frying pan, and but with us, we do them in the oven because we do so many, so many pounds of them. Essentially, we just cut it up into cubes. I have a what we call Crazy Mom salt. It's kind of based on Jane's Crazy Salt, but my kids named it Crazy Mom Salt. And I use this in just about everything. So we're going to be doing some soups tonight, in the croutons and anything like that. This is kind of my essential ingredient. So to talk about some ingredients that I find really important in keeping my food waste down is I use this better than bouillon. This is a chicken one. There's also vegetarian ones and beef ones. I find either the chicken or the vegetarian in just about anything. You can use it when you're cooking rice, or you can use it when you're making a gravy or a sauce. I use it in soups, and in my house at home, we do so many soups because that's how we use up our leftovers. So you can buy this in the grocery store. This is a bigger jar, but you can buy this in the grocery store. I have this on hand all the time. I also make up this crazy salt. Essentially, You know, it's salt and pepper and garlic powder, onion powder, a little bit of sage, but you can put any sorts of things that you like if you're a person that likes oregano or likes more of an Italian flavor. But I always keep this crazy salt because it's just easy to do. With croutons, we just take oil. I have a sunflower oil because it's Maine. It comes from a Maine farm, but essentially we just, you know, put the oil all over the bread cubes, and then I put the crazy salt on top, and I just toss it with my hands. I put it on a sheet pan and put it in an oven around 300 degrees and just let them bake until they are completely dried out. And you can store them for forever. You can use them in a million different ways, as we talked about, on salads, you know, just as a snack. You can use them in soups and anything of that sort. And the other thing is that you can take these and put them in a food processor and turn them into a breadcrumb, and they also make a really nice breadcrumb for the top of mac and cheese or anything like that. The other thing we use a lot here we cut a lot of tomatoes for our sandwiches. And so we have tomato ends, the tops and bottoms, and just like with the bread, the smaller pieces that we can't use. So I did the same thing with these. I put a little bit of oil on them and a little bit of crazy salt, tossed them, put them in a sheet pan, and roasted them in the oven. I have a little bit of dill here. I went through my fridge at home to do this presentation and started looking at some of the things that I had leftovers for, and my sister was here over the weekend and left over Easter, left some dill in my fridge, and you can see, you know, it was starting to go. So I just threw that on the pan with the tomatoes and roasted that. So you can roast any kind of vegetables. So whenever your vegetables are starting to get old or a little bit wilty, you can always just cut them up and put a little bit of oil on them and crazy salt and toss them. I have these carrots in my fridge. I wouldn't peel them. I would just scrub them off well and just take off as little as possible on either end. Sometimes when I have people start their jobs here, they, you know, cut into something, any vegetable, and just like cut way in, and it believe me, it doesn't happen for long because there's so little you need to cut off. It's the same thing with broccoli or anything else. You can use those stems. You just cut off the very, very end of it. And if the stems are a little too woody, you can peel them. But we always chop the stems up and use them in whatever we're making. So, you know, in my house, I had broccoli, I had onions, I had carrots, I had some old dill. I had more tomatoes, yet more tomatoes. I had some chicken that I cut up to go in a soup. Celery. The celery is, again, just cut off the very, very end of it. Obviously, a lot of times people throw these leaves away, which is another thing that is, I hate. These are really great. They offer really wonderful texture, and they also offer really good flavor in anything that you're doing. You can see my nasty bananas. I had 3 bananas in here from the beginning of the month, and I brought those in because I'm going to use those in a smoothie. And so I have a little bit of everything. My sister also left me some fresh mango chunks. So the mango chunks will go in a smoothie. I've got some juice that I had left over and some berries, and those will all go in the smoothie. So anyway, I can start just showing you. I'm gonna make cream and tomato soup, and I'm also gonna make a chicken soup. And I just start out, I don't know if that is good. Can people see me and hear me okay? I just start out putting a little bit of oil in the bottom. This is the same oil I use for roasting vegetables. It's the same oil I use for doing the croutons, and I'm just putting it into the bottom of the pan. I have some cut up the celery and the carrots that I had that are going in, and I put a little bit of garlic and some of my vegetable paste that we talked about earlier. Actually, it's chicken paste, and I have that ready to go in. I also have these tomato ends. I'm going to put in another pan and get those going with some onions. I roasted these first, just because when you roast vegetables, they get a little bit caramelized. They also get just a lot more flavor to them. And so you can use the things without roasting them, but roasting them, I think, gives them a much better flavor. And you can eat them. This is something you can eat, just the roasted vegetables, or you can put it into something else. So it's another, there's several steps that you can use this for before anything goes in the compost. So as I said, just as a roasted vegetable, it's fabulous. And then with these, I roasted them and I'm going to put them in a soup. So in my chicken soup, I've got the garlic, I've got chicken paste, and I have celery, carrots, and onions that I have all ready to go in. In my other pan, I'm going to throw in just some onions and garlic and chicken paste, and I'm going to put that in here. When you put the base in with the soup, it makes the vegetables sweat a little. The salt in the base will bring out some of the flavor in the vegetables, and it'll also help soften things quite a bit. And you want to get these things in here and start, cooking them till they get a little bit soft. So while these are going, I'm going to turn them down a little bit, and I am going to talk with you about recipes. One of the things that we do here is I print everything out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and put it in a plastic sleeve. That way you can wipe it off. You can take your recipe out and you can make any notes that you want. And so if you have stuff in your fridge, you can just Google, broccoli, tomato, and chickpea soup. And you'll get a good basic recipe. So you can take almost any of the ingredients that you have and Google a basic recipe for whatever that is. What I do is I print them out, I write notes on them, I date them, and so that I can remember. Of course, I always think I'm going to remember, and I never do. But this is my crazy salt, but with things like banana bread, when I'm trying to use up old bananas, I've made, banana pumpkin bread, and I've made, banana chocolate chip bread and that sort of thing. So I think it's really important to keep recipes and take notes on them and make them your own, and not to be afraid, because with a soup, there's almost nothing you can do wrong. And you can use up so many different ingredients that you have, and just make your refrigerator soup, and it'll come out delicious, I guarantee it. So these going, I'm going to talk a little bit about smoothies. Generally in smoothies, I like to use a base of some kind of juice, in this case orange juice because I had it, and I use oat milk because I had that as well. I have frozen strawberries that I usually keep. Frozen berries, either I buy them myself, or when I get berries, I spread them out on a sheet pan or I spread them out on a dish to keep them dry. If you just leave them in a box or you wash them ahead of time, they tend to spoil faster. If you don't get to berries in time, the best thing to do is, before they're going to turn, spread them out on a sheet pan, put them in your freezer, and then you can put them in a dish. So if you spread them out and put them in your freezer, it works much better that way, because they are, in the industry, we call it IQF, individually quick frozen. Once they're frozen individually, then you can put them in a Ziploc bag or in a Pyrex container or whatever you want, and then you can always use them forever. So we do that with a lot of stuff. I definitely do that at home as well. I put things on a sheet pan and freeze it. I can use it later. I do the same thing with herbs. If you ever buy fresh herbs, then you can use them, and then when they are going to turn, then you can just put them on a sheet pan, chop it, and do whatever you want and freeze them. They don't always look beautiful when you go to use them, but if you're using them in a soup, it doesn't matter. Or even if you're using them in a pasta salad or something, it's an easy thing to just freeze the herbs. You don't have to preserve them any other way. You just lay them out on a sheet pan and IQF them, individually quick freeze them. So here at the bakery, I have the luxury of having a water spigot here. So I can just add a little bit of water to the pot, and that's the start of my broth, and it'll also allow the vegetables to cook a little bit longer. And so we can just let them cook a little bit while we're talking smoothies. So we use quick sticks here. This is what we call a quick stick. I think they're also called immersion blenders. The one that we use at the bakery are ginormous. I brought this from home. It's still a fairly big one, but I like this a little bit better than a blender, because you can, you'll see later, we're just gonna, with a cream of tomato soup, we're just gonna put the quick stick in, and you can grind it up right like that, rather than having to put it in batches in your blender. I also use these for smoothies. I find it makes it so much easier, and you don't have to get your blender out and wash it and whatever. These, the immersion blenders work really well, and then you can just put it in a little bit of soapy water and run it that way in a cup, and that cleans it out. So I have a little pot here that I put, I've got some strawberries and some oat milk and a little bit of orange juice that I'm going to put in. I have some yogurt. A lot of smoothie recipes call for Greek yogurt. I like just whole milk yogurt that isn't Greek. We use Stonyfield a lot. This is one of my favorite commercial brands, and then we also buy some local yogurt as well. But everyone's afraid of fat, but in reality, you need fat to digest, and to obviously it helps your brain cells, but it helps your body. It also means that you can absorb different vitamins. So vitamin D, you can't take a fat soluble vitamin like vitamin D without without having a fat in what you're eating, or your body won't absorb it. So I think that I think that just whole milk yogurt is the best way to go. You eat less of it, you're more satisfied, and it also is a much creamier texture, and I think it makes a better smoothie. Sometimes I feel like the Greek yogurts are a little bit more grainy and a little more tart, because essentially a Greek yogurt is just a regular yogurt that they have drained the extra liquid out of. So I had some frozen berries that I had in here. I had some orange juice in my fridge. I have the mango that was my sister left me. Any kind of spinach, if you want to put green in, you can do. I have spinach, but you can use kale, you can use Swiss chard, anything like that, and just put everything in, and just use your quick stick, and it'll get it nice and smooth. And then if you want, you can add any kind of chia seeds. You can add anything, pretty much anything that you want. If you find it's too thick, you can add a little more juice, or you can add a little more or less banana. So I won't keep doing that, but I'm gonna put my bananas in too, and then in order to make the smoothie, we're just gonna quick stick it and get it nice and smooth and ready to go. So back to my soups. I'm going to put in my soup that has just the onions and garlic. I'm going to put those roasted tomatoes in and get everything stewing up together. And we'll let that, cook down a little bit more as well. And then I'm going to I had cut up the chicken earlier from my house, and I'm going to put all this chicken into the other soup that has just the onions, carrots, celery, and just throw that in to get going. So while those are cooking, I don't know if there's any questions that people have so far. I was going to answer questions at the end, but I can answer questions now if there's any questions that people have.
There's one asking, what can you do for berries? Is there anything you can do with them besides freezing them?
You can also, one of the things you can do with apples and a lot of berries is to squeeze lemon juice on them, and that will keep them a lot longer. You can put orange juice, so any kind of acidic or citrus juice on berries will definitely help keep them longer. And then, as I said, making sure that they are kept dry. Spread them out, even if you're not going to freeze them. Spread them out on a paper towel in your fridge as best you can, or put some paper towels in your fruit container, just to keep them from, the more that they sit in there, the quicker they will go bad if they're all together. Not only the weight of the berries will cause them to go bad faster, but also just all the moisture. So if you can keep them spread, or have things in there that are absorbent, or you could put, as I said, citrus juice on them. One of the things we do here with apples, if we're putting them on a salad, we don't want them to brown. We use a little bit of water and lemon juice and just dip them in that, and it'll keep them from browning. As you know, there's also certain things that go bad faster. Something like an avocado goes bad really fast, and you want to make sure that you cover it with plastic wrap and it's touching the surface of the avocado. You also just want to make sure that any of those things that you're worried about, just make sure that you don't just leave them stuck in the corner of your fridge. And then, I think if you take care of them, obviously try to eat them fast, but then I think freezing the leftovers is really the way to go.
Do you have any tips on someone that might want to start composting at home?
Some communities have composting where you can have drop-off composting. Some have curbside pickup that you have to pay for. If you are composting at home, I honestly would tell you to go online. Just that there are so many different, worm composting has been a big thing. If you have young kids, I think it's a really cool way to compost with them. If you're just composting on your own, you have to make sure that you rotate your compost, because the heat and moisture, the humidity is what's going to make your compost work. And so you do need to keep it rotated. But honestly, I think, going to your, like the UMaine extension, to their website, or going and looking at worm composting, I think those are the best. They'll also tell you things like, coffee grounds and that sort of thing are great things to mix into compost. So there's just so much information out there. I'm not a composting expert, but I know that there's a lot of information that you can access and a lot of fun projects that you can do with compost.
If you use vegetables that are on the edge of going bad in a soup, how do you know how long the soup is going to last?
Well, once you cook it, you're going to stop all that decomposition, so you can get a whole nother life out of them. A soup, will last you a good week, 5 to 7 days in your fridge. So what is great is once you cook it, you're going to stop all those enzymes from breaking the product down, and that way you can start the clock ticking all over again. With fruit and smoothies, because you're not cooking them, it's a little bit different, but again, you can freeze the fruit ahead of time, or you can make smoothies and freeze your smoothies, and then you just, when they are thawed, when you go to use them, you just shake it up, and it'll come back together and be a good texture. So with my chicken soup, I'm going to put a little bit more water in. Obviously, I can leave it just as a chicken vegetable, but I also I have some couscous here. This is what they call Israeli couscous. It's a much larger couscous than what we traditionally use, and it also is roasted. So it's dried and it's roasted. It has a really nice texture to it, and it also has a great flavor, but it cooks really fast. So it's a good thing to use in soups. You can put rice or noodles or anything in a soup and let it cook. The problem is it works great. The problem is that oftentimes they'll just keep cooking, and so your noodles will be kind of bloated and not as nice. So you can either put them in the soup at the end and make sure that they cook, or you can cook them, pre-cook them, or it's obviously great if you have leftover rice or noodles. It's a great thing to put in a soup that way. The other great thing you can do with leftover rice is make fried rice, and essentially heat up your pan, put some onions in there, put your rice in there. You can put a little bit of sesame oil, fish sauce if you want to, and then definitely soy sauce. And you can put anything in, vegetables, that you have in your fridge, wilted carrots like I have. Fried rice is a great thing to use up a lot of leftovers. And also that's something else, as I said, Google fried rice and there will be a million ideas for you. And if you print it out and you just make notes for what you have and what you liked and what you didn't like, then it's something that's a great go-to meal for another time. The other thing about fried rice is you can put eggs in them. So essentially you can either scramble eggs, or you can make an omelet type thing, sort of just as almost like a baked egg, and then cut it in strips and put it in your fried rice as well. I'm just going to wait for this to get the soup to get a little bit hotter before I put any of my couscous in. What I'm going to do with the tomato soup is I'm going to let it boil down a little bit, and then I'm going to put a tiny bit of Parmesan cheese in it and a little bit of half and half, and quick stick that, and so that we get it all nice and smooth. And that will also, this happens to be a cream of tomato, but you can do it with any vegetables. You know, you can make a cream of broccoli and put cheddar in instead of Parmesan. You can make, you know, a cream of asparagus or whatever, and all of it's getting quick sticked, and so or using your immersion blender, and so you don't need to worry so much if there's, you know, stemmy pieces, or if the vegetables were wilted when you put them in there. So,
What type of salt do you use in your crazy salt?
In my crazy salt, I use kosher salt. The thing about kosher salt is that it is put through a press, and so it's flakes of salt, and so you get a lot more flavor from it. So first of all, salts do have different flavors, just like water has different flavors. And not only do different salts have different flavors, but it's also how it gets delivered to you. So with kosher salt, it's flaky, and instead of it being, you know, a ground crystal or a little, you know, square, it's a flake, and so when it hits your tongue, it has a really nice flavor. With my crazy salt, I use just like a Himalayan pink salt, because again, it has a nice flavor. It also has a nice texture. I use a flaky kosher salt. So, you know, you can use just one type of salt, or you can use a couple different salts. I would say don't use just table salt, because that most of it has additives, and it's also ground really, really fine. And it has, just like it doesn't have a lot of dimensions to it. So use a sea salt, use a, you know, a pink sea salt, use kosher salt, you know, whatever. Just, I wouldn't use straight up like Morton's table salt. As I said, it's got additives in it, and it's ground too fine. So in my crazy salt, I use this Himalayan pink sea salt. You can get it at the grocery store. You can get it online. You can get it at TJ Maxx. And I use, so kosher salt, Himalayan pink sea salt, black pepper, granulated garlic, granulated onion. I use a celery salt that's already prepared, not a celery seed, but a celery salt. So that adds a little bit of a salt in it, and any kind of ground salt flavor is, or any kind of ground celery flavor is great, I think, in something like crazy salt. And then I use a little bit of sage, a very, very small amount. But as I said, you can tailor it to what you want. You can also, you know, Google crazy salt or homemade salt blends or whatever, and find a mix that works for you. Make sure that you're using a granulated garlic and a granulated onion. If you use powdered, it clumps up and it's really hard to use. Especially, I keep this by my stove at home. I also use it as my, you know, table salt at the table, but having it at the stove, you know, you're always getting it sort of hot and moist, and so it'll clump up. So just make sure you use granulated garlic and onion in it.
Is there a way to sneak some veggies that might be going bad into like a baked good, like a kid-friendly recipe?
For sure, carrots, squash, winter squash. My husband always used to get very excited because he would sneak winter squash into the kids' scrambled eggs in the morning. It gives them a little bit of an orange look to them, and so they look very eggy. So we would have leftover squash, or he'd make squash, mash it up, and put it in scrambled eggs. You can use also any of those in, you know, in bread or muffins or anything. So any of those root vegetables like carrots, you can do that with beets. You can do it with pumpkin, winter squash, any kind of winter squash, trying to think, obviously potato you can put in, and add a little bit of that in, you know, any kind of starchy things. I don't know if they have any questions about what other things I can say yay or nay, but I think anything that you can mash, like a potato, turnip, again, carrots. Here, you know, we shred carrots on our for our sandwiches. We also use them in carrot cakes. We make a morning glory muffin that has carrot and pineapple and, you know, nuts and raisins and that sort of thing. Pumpkin you can use in about anything, like canned pumpkin is great to put in. As I said, when I make banana bread, oftentimes I'll put some pumpkin in it. If I have pumpkin, you can put squash in that as well. Yeah, like beets, as I said, beets you can shred and eat raw. You can roast them, you can boil them and mash them and put in any kind of baked good.
Do you have any recipes like online or in your store that you use?
We don't give out our recipes at the beginning of the pandemic when we had to close down. We did a recipe subscription where you paid $35 and we released, like, you know, 12 to 14 of our recipes every day with a story. If I have enough people that are interested, we could get that going again. It has our carrot cake, which is one of our best-selling cakes, or is our best-selling cake, and it has a variety of our other recipes on there. But I don't have things actively online, and people always talk about me writing a cookbook, but I don't know. I love to cook. I don't like to write cookbooks. I'm happy. My email address is becky@wildoatsbakery.com, and I'm more than happy to, you know, answer people's questions or talk to you on the phone. And Becky's hotline. My sister uses it a lot. So anyway, if you have further questions or you want recipe ideas, I'm happy to talk to people. So I'm gonna take my quick stick out of the smoothie. This is just water in here. And I'm just gonna take it out and run it in water so I can clean it off. And then I'm going to put my tomatoes over here, take them off the stove, and I'm gonna get those mashed up so that I can add the cheese and the cream into it.
How long do smoothies last in the fridge?
Smoothies?
Yeah.
They really they have a 3 to 5 day shelf life in the fridge, and oftentimes they'll separate. Like I said, I try to use a whole milk yogurt. I also like to use a fair amount of banana in them, because that's something that also keeps them emulsified, keeps them in suspension so they don't separate as much. For the person who asked about sneaking vegetables in, smoothies are an awesome way to do it. You can put beets in smoothies, you can put carrots in smoothies. Like I said, you can put a little bit of spinach, you can put kale, anything like that, mint, basil. So those are all ways that you can sneak veggies and fruits in. Doing it in a smoothie is a really easy way to do that, and you don't need to cook any of those things. But smoothies, as I said, they have about a 3 to 5 day shelf life. The other thing that is a good coconut milk, canned coconut milk is a good nutritious thing that you can also, that helps smoothies emulsify. You just have to get a good quality coconut milk, because sometimes the lower quality ones just don't have a great flavor. Whereas if you get a good organic one, or like a Thai Kitchen or one of the more popular brands, then you get a nice coconut flavor, as well as you get the emulsifying effect where it keeps it in suspension better. And as I said, bananas are good for that. Chia seeds and flax seeds also are great in smoothies, and they help keep things in suspension, and are a good nutritious thing to add into any of the smoothies. So using the quick stick is a way that you can decide to leave your cream soups chunky, or you can grind them up really fine. I'm putting the cheese in now after I've taken it off the heat for a minute, just because you don't want the cheese to seize up and turn into rubber bands. So this way it'll melt, but it won't get all stringy and seize up. And then I'm going to put a little bit of half and half in, and I just drizzle this in slowly. Whenever you're putting dairy into something, you just have to be careful that you don't want to put it in something hot and have it curdle on you. So essentially, you just need to make sure that you're stirring the whole time, and you're putting it in very slowly. The chicken soup, I'm just going to throw in the roasted Israeli couscous that we talked about. And couscous is actually a pasta. It's not a grain. And that, as I said, cooks up really, really quickly. So again, with the tomato soup, we did tomato, but you can do any kind of cream of soup, any kind of cream of vegetable soup. You can also, you can do it with alternative milks if you don't want to use dairy. You don't have to put cheese in it. You can roast the vegetables ahead of time, or not roast them. Roasting, as with freezing things, once you roast it, you're stopping a lot of that enzymatic problems that that make it start rotting. So roasting it will give it a little bit more life before you have to put it in your soup or put it in your compost.
We have a few minutes left. Do you want to just finish up these questions?
Sure.
So someone said, I saw you had a lot of compost containers out back. Is that because you produce so much, or do you sort out different things?
It is because we produce so much. So as just for anyone who hasn't been here, as I mentioned earlier, we have a baking kitchen, we have a savory kitchen, we have 80 full-time staff that work here. We make everything from scratch, so we're using things from in their very essential ingredient to begin with. And then we also have compost that we try to collect from customers. So when customers have leftover food, we try to capture that as well. So we produce a ton of compost, no matter how much we try and keep that down. And then, as I said, we have a really big operation here. We have a 19,000 square foot building, and we, have thousands of customers that come through our door every day. So we are producing constantly. Our staff start at 3:30 in the morning and work until 5 at night. And, we're doing things for sandwiches. We slice tomatoes and pickles, and, we pick parsley and mint and, shred lettuce and cut onions. And we're always making something.
Good, last question. I've always used a blender, but I'm interested in a quick stick. Any brand or model you would recommend that has good longevity?
The Waring brand the WARING, I think are good. That's what we use because they're a kind of a crossover. The smaller ones are kind of a crossover home commercial one. So I think those are really good, and that's what we use. I don't know all the ones that are out there on the market, but I think that that is a good place. I can probably also tell you. I was going to tell you what size this one is, but it doesn't. I don't think it says it on there directly, and I don't have my reading glasses. But if you email me, I can let you know what size this one is. I don't think so. But thanks for coming, and thanks for listening. And as I said, if you have further questions, don't hesitate to email me, and I will try to answer your questions. And any of you that are interested in coming up and seeing our operation, I'm happy to arrange a tour, a behind the scenes tour, and you can see us making soups for real.
All right. So I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. My name is Hannah Creighton, and I'm a student intern at the Mitchell Center. I work on community education and outreach, but I'm also a fellow resident of Winslow. So I'm a proud member of a pilot community. And if you want to reduce your food waste at home, you can use some of these resources we've created. We've really made it as easy as possible for you guys to get involved. So on this first slide here is the home tracker. So this is used to track and measure your food waste and to reduce on a weekly basis. And you can also follow us on all social media for Food Rescue Maine updates and more information about drop-off sites in your area. So I put all of the social media and the website link in the chat already. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And please let us know in the chat too if there are any education materials that you'd like to see from us in the future. We really appreciate feedback from our communities. Next slide, please. We also have education programs for both K through 5 and high school students. So if you would like to see food waste education done at your school, youth group, aftercare, or other, please contact us and we can help get these for you. Next slide. Our Food Rescue Maine website is the hub for all information food waste related. So if you want to learn about our other 6 solution areas or read our blog posts, they are also on the website. And all other resources that are mentioned here can also be found on the website, including the household tip sheet that is on this slide, which can be used on your kitchen refrigerator and used as a reference guide when you're cleaning out your refrigerator. Next slide, please. As always, we also encourage you all to donate your excess or about to expire food items to your local food pantry. You can use this link that's up on the screen, foodpantries.org, to find a food pantry nearest to you. This site is really great because you just type in your zip code and it'll pop up with all of the food pantries nearest to you. Next slide. And of course, we also have our drop-off sites in all 4 locations. Winslow's is at the public library located at 136 Halifax Street. And Waterville's is located at iRecycle on the Armory Road. I also want to mention that we have drop-off sites in Reedfield and in Portland. 5 locations are in Portland, 1 in the Reedfield area, but services Reedfield, Wayne, and Fayette. If you are in attendance here, but you do not currently have a drop-off site near us, you can also put that in the chat and we will get in touch with you to see what we can do. But these drop-off site locations are for you to bring your food waste to, and they will be recycled into either compost or biogas, which is used as renewable energy. And the final slide. And again, we would like to thank you all for attending, and a huge thank you to Sydney, Chef Becky, and Suzanne for putting on this event, as well as Jared for helping with production. And we also want to wish you a happy Earth Day, and thank you again to our library partners as well for co-sponsoring this event. And you guys can have a great evening.